Okay, I'm going to take another shot at this. I did a quick video of this that needs to be edited that kind of combines a little bit of sight measuring and just mapping out dark shapes and light shapes. I took on the homework. I painted this upside down, first in yellow and then blocked in the darker forms. And the same with this one, painted it upside down, mapped out the darker shapes, dropped in the lighter shapes. So tried that both ways. I had done this as a demo in class yesterday, but I'm going to redo this. So I've just mopped up the water there. I'm going to take this image and just map it out here. I think I'll work on it upside down again. I want to show you that sometimes that can be an advantage because you're less distracted. People have asked about the dull yellow that I'm talking about. So when we're talking about dull, I mean achromatic, not a very chromatic color. You can see that when you mix yellow up directly, just pure yellow is pretty chromatic, although a clean palette helps to make colors chromatic. Anything that you mix with yellow will dull it. Almost anything that you mix with yellow will dull it. So a little bit of brown will make a slightly darker color. A little bit of violet will make a slightly darker color. And then you add some water to keep it really thin. Okay, so I'm just going to use a little bit of yellow, this kind of schmutzy color that's here. I think schmutz means snot, and I think that's pretty accurate. Okay, so now I have a light, not too distracting color, yellow or orange or red, intense green, any really intense color. It's kind of an awkward underpainting. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to work around. Right now the camera is exactly where my head should be to be able to see this accurately. But hey, life's full of little obstacles, right? Okay, so I'm just going to look at big shapes. See this big shape right here, this big dark shape? It comes in, somewhere off the bottom, and it comes over to a point somewhere in there, angles up just the tiniest bit. It's a pretty straight line, a little chunk out of it, smaller than that. And then it angles up. It's hard not to be influenced by this, the underpainting that's already there, but I don't think that's too inaccurate. Then it angles up like this, and then there's a little bit of darkness, not quite half, and then there's an angle like that. So all I'm doing is kind of visually looking at this and saying, that's a shape. Okay, so I can look at that dark shape. I'm gonna leave this alone. Then I can kind of look at this, and I can choose something to measure. Since I've selected that shape, right, since that's already been painted, I'm committed. So I can look at that. I've already used it to measure. I've said that that shape is slightly bigger than this shape. This line is slightly bigger than that shape. I could get more specific, but all I want to do is see that everything kind of fits, right? So the other side is right about here. The proportions are pretty similar, right? The light shape here, the overall shape of this is similar to this, not exactly and perfect, but similar. Okay, there's a semicircular shape there that's at an angle like that, and then it kind of comes to a point like that, and coming off of the bottom of that shape, coming out of that corner, there's a dark line. It goes about like that. So what I'm doing is I'm just trying to look at what's here, not what I think is here. From this point, which could be in the wrong place, since I didn't do any measuring at all, I'm just eyeballing. Looks like I made this shape a little big. If I was to guess, I would say that that line, yeah, is just a little bit past the middle. So the middle of the image is right about there, right? Middle of the image, which means I've overshot that a little bit. All I really need is kind of the middle of the image. And as I've done in every demo, I really like to mess things up several times. Because of just how much fun it is to fix things. Mopping up paint is a blast. Okay. And I'm not kidding, it really is kind of fun. Just keeping this really thin. Okay. So if the middle of the canvas is right about there, middle of the image is right about there, then this line comes up about like that, just past midway. And if the center of the image, then this shadow is a little bit further over than I had it. It'd be a good idea to let things dry, but I want to get this demo out to you before somebody hurts me. Okay, so I can look at this and say, I'm guessing that's just a little more than the third, but let's check. So it's one shape, two shapes, and a little bit. So not quite a third, a little more than a third. So what you find is most people are able to eyeball half, and they're able to eyeball thirds, roughly. So when I do that, I can check. Yeah, that's about a third. So you can divide things into quarters and thirds. So if I look at this, if I find that halfway point again, so the halfway point is about there, then where this intersection comes off looks like about a quarter of the way up. It's about there. Okay, so from there on, there's a shape like that, this shadow shape, and then it comes up in a dark shape, and then this width. So there's a shape about that big, comes over, something like that. And this dark form down here, let's see, got a dark shape like that. This is mainly just about kind of paying attention. Coming over, and that line is going to stop, so it kind of lines up with that. So there's a form, it's the edge of that dark block form, comes over like that, and it comes up about as far over as, so you can see that forms kind of a parallelogram. And angles over. There's a thin shadow shape. Okay, so more or less I've mapped out the darker values that are there. Okay, so they look something like that. And I could just leave it like this. I mean, there is a fair amount of information here. So if I flip this around, you can see this isn't perfect, but I mean, what is? And the idea is that I can roughly map things out without having any outlines or without having any lines at all. I'm going to remove these little construction points right here. And if we find out that I'm the only person on the planet who can visually measure halves and thirds, then I'm going to register as a superhero. But cognitive science tells us that, in fact, everybody has the ability to do that. If you've ever argued with a 3-year-old over exactly what constitutes half of a cookie, you know 3-year-olds can certainly tell what a half is. And if you have 3 small studio assistants around to help you with this experiment, try dividing M&Ms in thirds. You'll find that they do it with precision that probably would be envied in most physics labs. Okay, so that, while that's drying, that's kind of mapped out. All right, so I'm gonna, just because it's a little easier to see and reach, I don't want to drip paint on these other areas. So I'm just going to mix up a slightly lighter value. That means I'm going to throw a little yellow into it and water. That's how you lighten a value. In watercolor, you just add water. It desaturates it and makes it instantly into a tint. Okay, and then I can look at this and say, that shape is a lighter gray. That shape is a lighter gray. That's a lighter gray. Coming around to there is a lighter gray. Lighter gray, a little lighter gray. There's a little bit of a halo on those colors. Little indication of a lighter gray there. And this shape back here is in that second value. So I could go ahead and indicate that the darker values are a slightly darker thing by just putting another pass of the darker value on once this yellow sets up a little bit so that I can keep clean edges. So I could just come through, and because the second layer is going to be darker because of layering, when you add a transparent color over another transparent color, they will get darker. Oh, and I had apparently not painted through that shape. So, you know, brain farts aside, it's pretty easy to go through and just map out the values and not worry at all or certainly not much about line work. Okay, so again, so I can pretty quickly run through something and just indicate where the shapes are, and all I have to do is kind of find the middle of something or find a third and make a few placements. Once I've picked one or two things that sort of work, I can use that as a measuring tool. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. You know, it's not the end of the world. But I want to be as close as I can. The main thing that I want you to see is that it's possible to draw the shapes and never worry about the objects. I'm not trying to draw a lemon. The lemon is created in your mind, right? You see a lemon there because I've given the light and dark values. I could come back in and clean this up, or I could use this as my first stage on the guess and check kind of process. I could make this my guess and then check and clean things up, right? And then fix it in my subsequent layers of paint. Okay, I hope that sort of makes sense. I know I'm doing this really quickly, but I really want to get this edited and posted. Have a great day and have some fun with this.